Welcome everybody to a new analysis of Tradomics. This is the episode 66 and thus this is focused on the Swiss stocks. We have selected among all the 20 Swiss stocks belonging to this ME 20 the most relevant one. But if you want to have ad hoc analysis about some other stocks that are not reported in this video, you can write us at tradomica@gmail.com. So according to the last analysis that we issued, we were saying that this T plus 2 upward cycle was having a total duration of um, 30 uh, 40 days, and therefore we could have added just 4 days back to the upside in order to close it, and all the others to eventually start a retracement, because the T plus 2 upward cycle is a monthly cycle and its duration is encompassed between 24 and 44 days. So statistically speaking, there were more possibility to the downsides rather than to the upside. And therefore, this is what happened. So we have closed the T plus 2 at 40 bars, and therefore we started a retracement. Now, the thing is that if we um, gauge the total duration from the top where the T plus 5 is was made on the 25th of July 2024. Here we have a duration of 65 days. So potentially from this top, we have the beginning of something that might resemble to more a T plus 2, a T plus 3, rather than just a T plus 1 or weekly cycle. Okay, because now we have more than the sufficient condition in terms of time and also in terms of swings or price levels that here define the T plus 2 and T plus 3. And as you see, here we have at certain harsh retracement. Harsh retracement compared to this low where the T plus 3 was signed. Harsh retracement means that we broke down this 61.8% Fibonacci retracement, and now we are eating to the 78.6, which means that the next target is 282.8 Swiss francs. Now, if this is the target, the potential target, in terms of time, how long do we have in order to reach it? So first of all, or in order to answer that question, let's study the downward cycle. So from this T plus 3, we have add the first T plus 1, and then we splitted the other cycles into the first weekly downward cycle positive, the second weekly downward cycle negative, because the low in which it ended was lower compared from the low to which it started. And here we are about to close the third weekly cycle that is negative. Okay, so now if we gauge the duration from this T plus 1, from that low to the previous low before the beginning of the new cycle, the weekly cycle, we have 8 days, so median duration. You can always check by yourself. This is a reproducible method. Here we have 10 days, and the last one is at 7 days. So basically, we have at most other 4 days to proceed to the downside and close this weekly cycle. But do we have also 4 days regarding all the other cycles? So this separately weekly cycle, maximum 4 days, has to be considered within a bigger cycle because of the Matryoshka effect. So therefore, do we have time for other 4 days? Here we signed 42 days. No, we have just 2 days. So basically, the downtrend can continue until Tuesday, 12th of October, and by Wednesday, 13th of November, we should expect a bounce back to the upside. Okay, so maximum 2 days until to the downside and then bounce back to the upside. Okay, so that's what we can forecast on Roche. Can we go back to this top? And the answer is not immediately, because if from this top we have a T plus 2 or a T plus 3, we need a certain amount of candles below the stop. And generally for a T plus 3, we need a median duration, which is roughly 15, 17 days at least, um, number of candles below the stop. But considering that here we have a T plus 5 ongoing, probably we will have more candles before reaching back to the stop. Okay, so here we have to be careful, because this bounce can be a bounce to the dead cat before returning to the downside. But this bounce of the dead cat, eventually, I'm saying dead cat just to give the idea that this hardly will be really restart to the trend to the upside, can last, if here we expect a T plus 2, can last 10 or more days. Okay, and eventually one of the possible targets, if this will be a decent bounce back to the upside, will be at 303 Swiss francs. Okay, so this gap down can be in focus. So we will monitor over time whether this will be the case or not. We still have a couple of days to the downside, and then we expect a push back to the upside to close this T plus 2 eventually, or at least to start a T plus 1 eventually, if they don't want to begin a T plus 2 monthly cycle. Okay, so that's the situation we have on Roche, and let's switch to its competitor, Novartis. So on Novartis, I was expecting at least a return to this top, because we had still room for having this 1.67% push. So we had 34 days at the time when the analysis was issued, but we had a downtrend. We had a downtrend, and also this was fueled by the earnings release as well. So here, the analysis was not correct. I was expecting at least another little push to the upside, because this T plus 3, even if I put the question mark, could have ended with this move and then start something else. I was also saying in the analysis that we had to keep in the back of our mind that the time to close this T plus 5 was already enough with this top, and would have been more than enough also eventually with the top that was not that one didn't happen with the close of this move. So now what we have to do is that we have to update the chart and the segmentation. So first of all, here from this top to this top, we have had a T plus 2. And therefore, here the T plus 2 can be moved here. And from this top now, this is not a T plus 3, because we have already 50 bars below the top. So this top is potentially a T plus 5. So the retracement or the closing of this T plus 5 has already started. And you see here that there are a lot of candles now to define this top as a T plus 5 yearly cycle. Huh? And the T plus 2 now can be moved also on desktop. Now, considering the downward cycle, given that here we have the t plus 2 and this is negative, how many days do we have? So days are 40, as for Roche, 41, 42. So now here, I would expect by Wednesday next week, a certain bounce back to start at least t or t plus 1 or even a t plus 2. If we gauge also the total duration from this t plus 3, we have 67 days, which is a median duration. So now I would expect some fight, approximately here, touching the moving average 200 period, which is important support. For next week, let's see whether we will have the beginning of a weekly or t plus 1 or t plus 2 cycle. And let's monitor it over time. So that's what I would expect for Novartis for the beginning of next week. And also, if we consider the time now, it's 50 bars. So here we have already started a t plus 2. And for the upward cycle from this top, here we have 17 bars. So we still have a bit of time to close the t plus 2. Here we have 7 days. Here we have 12 days. So we might have also bounced back to the upside because first of all, time for the closing of this t plus 2 will be running out by Wednesday, and eventually they might also start closing this t plus 1. Okay, so by mid of next week, we will have, statistically speaking, two forces pushing the price back to the upside, at least for a retracement. And this retracement have the following targets: 94.70, 95.94, and 96.94. Okay, so this will be the Fibonacci level that will sign the first, the second, and the third target for the development eventually of a new T plus 2 downward cycle. Okay, so similar situation as for Roche as well. So let's move now to the next one. So on Nestle, as for Roche and Novartis, we have closed this upward cycle that was flagged during the last analysis after a total duration of 30, 32, 33 days. Okay, so here we can update the chart as well. We could have expected also a little bit more push to the upside, but the time here was enough also to close the T plus 2, which is 33 days is a median duration, and the duration you can always refer to here, which is actually in the middle of 24 to 44 bars. Okay, we from the top we started a new T plus 2, so the T plus 2 now is ongoing. According to the downward cycle, here we have from this T plus 3 the first cycle, which is negative, T plus 2. Here I put the T plus 1 last time because I wanted to be conservative, but actually this cycle turned into a negative one, also thanks also to this candle. And here now we have another T plus 2. So you see that there is also on Roche and Novartis a specular situation in which here the T plus 2 has less days compared to Roche and Novartis, but still it's a negative one, and we are about to approaching the maximum duration. In this case, we still have 7 days, no, 9 days to go to the maximum duration. So here I would not exclude further downtrend. Okay, if the chances basically to have the bounce back to the upside are slightly higher to the upside compared to the downside, because considering 44 minus 24 is 20 days, and now we are more than 33 days, so there are more than 55% possibilities to the upside and 45% possibility to the downside. I mean, there are not so much. It's more like launching a coin and get head or cross. But there are slightly on Monday. There are slightly more possibilities to the upside rather than downside. And we will have to monitor over time whether they will start. And by they, I said HFT or algorithms. If they want to start a new T+2. So considering that from this low we have reached 6 days, probably they will push further the price back to the downside for other 1-2 days. As for the situation that we have on Roche and Novartis, I can put T here just for reference, but I would expect at least on Monday another push to the downside, okay, and then from Tuesday eventually a rebounds. So for a matter of completeness, I put here the arrow in red, at least for Monday/Tuesday. And then let's see if a new cycle, at least a T+2, will be developed. Now on Nestle, we have to consider that, as I said, not in the last analysis, but in previous analysis, here we have 175 days. So this might be a T+4 hybrid cycle. But considering that this might be also a T+5, and I'm really prone to consider this as a T+5 because now it's a negative cycle that is approaching the minimum duration of a T+5 yearly cycle. The yearly cycle, considering that is negative, can be made by a first T+3, then eventually a T+2, then eventually a T+2 with bounce back to the upside, then another T+2. So it's not given by fact that from this low or from the low to comes there will be a strong pushback to the upside. It depends also on the volumetric tendency of this downward cycle. So here we have to be really careful, because if this is a T+5 and let's put now it's a T+5, the downtrend can last another entire month, if not more. So it's not a brilliant period for Nestle to take long positions, because this downtrend can last until end of the month at least. So be really careful about it, okay? Despite it's a great company, but that is the situation we have at the moment, okay? So further downtrend for Monday and Tuesday. Let's see whether we will have a pushback to the upside. Be careful, because these are bounce of the decade. If here we have a T+5, and then the duration of this downtrend can last at least end of November, if not more. Okay, that's the situation we have so far, and let's jump to the next one. So the trend on Swisslife is still really strong, because we continue to update the tops. So from this top here, we have had a new top all-time high, and last week we had another all-time high. So now we can update the chart by putting another T+1 here, upward cycle. And if we gauge the total duration from the previous T+1 to this new T+1 made on the 17th of October, we have 15 days. And from this top of the 16th or 17th, sorry, to the new top here, 6 November, we have other 15 days. So now what is important to know is the total duration from this top. So we have reached a total duration of 82 bars, 82 out of 89. So here we can have, so for the next week, room to continue to the upside, but then you need to be careful eventually, if not with this top, that the time for the T plus 3 is running out. So we might not have at the beginning of another T plus 3, but eventually a T plus 2, considering that the trend is really strong. But at least by end of next week, if not the beginning of next week, you have to start thinking that the retracement will be in place. And this retracement will help also the closing of the T plus 2 here, because the time for the T plus 2 has reached 24 bars, so we are already into the minimum duration. And this retracement can also help the closing of this T plus 3, which has arrived at 70 days. So I would expect more retracement in the next week, really the next week. And if we take here the duration of this T plus 4, we have reached 142 bars. So it's median duration. But in order to close the T plus 4, we need more days to the downside. So they can start already next week. So be now really careful with Swisslife, because according to the time, we don't have too much to proceed to the upside. So considering 82 days out of 89, we have 5 days more to the upside and all the rest, which is more than 40 days to the downside. Okay, so we have not more than 30% chances on Monday to proceed to the upside, and all the rest, which is more than 85% to the downside. Okay, so that's is important. I was flagging here this low on in the other video, because I was expecting already a retracement in the last weeks, but um, this has not happened. Now the first target to the downside to keep monitor is this one. So new information from the market. This low made on the 31st of October is at 699 Swiss francs. Okay, so that is the first alarm for retracement from the top. So the upward cycles here and the downward cycle closing the T plus 2, T plus 3, and eventually also the T plus 4. Okay, so that's what I would um, flag out in terms of possibilities or statistical possibilities for the next week. On UBS, we have an interesting situation from a cycle perspective. Why that? With this candle that was triggered by the earning release here, that was done on the 30th of October, this candle went over this top. Okay, so given that we went over this top, for those that apply the technical analysis, this might be the touching of a resistance here at 28.29 Swiss francs. But for us, or for quantitative analysis or quantitative traders, this indication that we got from the market is particularly prominent, because given that now we have an upward cycle that has turned into a positive one, we can expect for the extension or for the remaining time of this T plus 5, the uh, an upward trend. Okay, we don't know how strong this upward trend will be, but for sure we know that the prices will have to return back to the stop at 29.57 Swiss francs in a time range that is encompassed between 190 and 339 days, which means, in other words, that we can, so the price can return to the upside of the all-time high um, by the 2nd of March 2025, oh, by 28th of February 2025 up to Q3 2025, okay? And this is a consideration for the long term. Now, if you wanted to have more short-term vision, here we had the following situation. From this T plus 5, we have at the first monthly upward cycle, the second monthly upward cycle that gave us a 3-month cycle closing. Then the second T plus 5 3-month upward cycle was generated in the first T plus 2, and now we had the closing of this second T plus 2. The closing of the second T plus 2 was done after 26 bars. And now here, how long was elapsed between the first top here made on the 1st of May until here, this top on the 29th of October? The answer is 106 days. So here now we have to be careful because we have more than a minimum duration to begin eventually a T plus 4 from this top. If not a T plus 4, we have also enough duration for the beginning of a T plus 3. And here we have already how many days? Here we have 8 days. So from this top, at least we have a new T plus 2. But we might have also something more than a T plus 2. We might have, so then you can bear in your mind, a T plus 3 or eventually a T plus 4. Okay, so that's what we can have from this top. Now, the interesting situation, given that it's not so easy to study the market, is also the downward cycles. So from this low, potentially we have a new T plus 5. But here we have the first T plus 2, and now we have with this low, what? With this low, we have another T plus 2 closed, 37 bars. So from this low, we might have also the beginning of a T plus 3. And why this is interesting? Because we have two forces from here and from here that are quite big ones. So in this range of price, which is between 30 Swiss francs and 26 Swiss francs, we might have two cycles that are T plus 3 grade, but one is pushing to the downside because it has to develop the U shape, and one is pushing to the upside because it needs to have the other reversal shape U. And we have already seen that this T plus 3 was really close to the stop. So here we have more strengths compared to this other one. So these are really details, but they are important to let you understand how the algorithms work. And it's not the case, by the way, that this candle here was 10%. So in 2 days, there was a volatility of 10%. And this 10% is necessary to have enough room for the upward and downward cycle to be developed. So forget for a second the earnings release, which was over the expectation. But how can we justify an earnings release which was over the expectation with a retracement the exact the same day that was 10%, or the next 2 days 10%, and a rebounds back to the upside after the earnings release in a matter of 3 days of plus 9%, minus 10%, and the day after, and then in the same week plus 10%. Of course, here you might have every kind of opinion or whatever reason to justify such moves. But from a quantitative perspective, and quantitative, I mean, let's refer to the algorithms. Here we have room to develop this cycle and to develop this cycle because those are really close one to another. So just one day. So let's see if from this top we're gonna have a t plus 3 or t plus 4, meaning that we will have this shape, then this shape, but of course we will not have to return back to this low, and the possibility of that shape might be one first weekly upward cycle, then the second weekly upward cycle, then something like this, then something like this, because we already know that we have on the mid long term this situation. Okay, so that's what we can forecast on UBS. Let's keep monitor for the next week whether this will be a T plus 2 or a T plus 3 or a T plus 4. Okay, in any case, I'm not expecting a return back to this low, but return gradually to the all-time highs. So on Swisscom, the situation is as follows. According to the last video, we said that this upward cycle could have proceeded to the upside. This is what happened. But unfortunately, from this top, we didn't have a T plus 2, but just a T plus 1, because here the duration is just 15 days. Potentially, we add the T plus 2 from this top, not even because it was 22 days. So here I have to basically put a T plus 1. And the total duration for the T plus 3 was of 55 days. So here we can remove this, and from this top here we might consider the beginning of what? We might consider the beginning of a T plus 4, because here we have 148 days. Okay, so here we might have a T plus 4 upward cycle. In order to challenge ourselves, from this top, can a new T plus 5 take shape? The answer is, let's gauge the duration. So the duration from the top of the previous T plus 5 to here is 368 days. 368 days is more than 338 days standard duration. So if we consider this one, we might consider it as a Bayer tongue, but a Bayer tongue of a T plus 3 can be just between 2 T plus 6. And because here we have just the T plus 5, this cannot be the case. So the only possibility that from here we have a T plus 5 is to consider a T plus 5 hybrid cycle. That is definitely seldom one, because here we have a duration between 339 to 379 bars. So at the moment, I would consider the beginning of the T plus 5 here, a new T plus 4, but I would by a medium and a total duration 190 to 338 days to expect a return here to the tops at 565 Swiss francs. we have to monitor carefully now what is going to happen, especially from a downward cycle perspective. So from this low, here we have at least a T plus 2. And this T plus 2 turned into a negative 1. And this T plus 2 has now reached a total duration of 35 days. So we have more than a median duration to close this T plus 2, even if we still have 9 days potentially to the downside. Okay, so bear in mind, other 9 days possibility to proceed to the downside, but we have more than a median duration. Here we have an oversold situation, and here there is touch of with the moving average 200 period. Therefore, I would expect a resistance here, and we have 7 days from this weekly downward cycle. So for the beginning of next week, we might have another couple of days potentially to the downside, probable, and then push back to the upside. Okay, so either we go this way or we directly go with this way from Monday onwards. Okay, I would expect next week the beginning of a new cycle, but we have to monitor carefully the strengths of the new cycle that will take shape, because um, if the strengths will be not enough, I mean not enough to return at least at 537.5 Swiss francs and then 544, then we will have to reconsider a little bit the structure, especially this low in which I sign a T plus 4. Okay, so this situation on Swisscom looks complicated, and the next week or also the 2 weeks to come by end of the month will be key to better understand how we can split all the downward cycles. Okay, because here eventually we might have not just a T plus 2 but a T plus 3. So the second way would be first T plus 3, second T plus 3, and third T plus 3. Now, this is something that the market reveals recently, so we have to adjust the frame accordingly. Let's see. We cannot go too much ahead in time here. Let's see from next week whether we will have a new cycle and which strength the new cycle will have. Last but not least, we have Geberit. So Geberit here at close of this cycle, upward cycle, and here in the last analysis we add a question mark whether the stop was a T or a T plus 1. Now let's check first of all that from this top T plus 3 to this top we had 25 days. So from this top here we have a good sign that this is a T plus 2, and we confirm that this one is a T plus 3 upward cycle. So the top that was done on the 26th of September. And this top done on the 18th of October is a weekly cycle because the total duration was of 9 days. So here we put a T upward cycle and we color it in white. Then the second thing is that from this low here, we have to understand whether this is the beginning of a T or plus 1 or T plus 2. Because from this low to this low here, we add the closing of this T plus 2. So naturally, you might expect the beginning of a T plus 2 or eventually a T plus 3, even because the total duration from this T plus 3 to this low here made on the 24 was 58 days. So basically more than a minimum duration. But here we have time eventually to do what? We have time to do this shape, have another one, and maybe close this one next week or in 2 weeks. So that's why here we might have just a smaller cycle, T plus 1. We can have T plus 1, T plus 2, T plus 1, and then a T plus 3. So what I can say at the moment is that this is not just a weekly cycle, but something more. It's a T plus 1. Let's see whether this will be also T plus 2. Okay, so at the moment we put T plus 1, T plus 2. Now for Geberit, the most important thing is to to closely monitor this low, because this low is the key to understand whether this cycle will turn into a negative cycle and whether this cycle will be still part of this T plus 3, or if from this low we will have something like this and something like this. Okay, so here I am. The market is not giving us particular information. We have to monitor this low, as said, at 509.8 Swiss francs, and eventually this top here at 553.0 Swiss francs. Okay, these are the two key levels to monitor in the next weeks, and the breaking of one of the two will give us additional information to better understand in which kind of downward and upward cycle this the price is. At the moment, it's a little bit steady state or flat because we have the moving average 200 period here, really close to the moving average 21 periods and the moving average 50 periods. So it's a steady state condition. If we take a channel like this, you see that from May to now, we have a condition in which the price was basically moving into a sideway move. Okay, that's why it is also important to monitor this low and also this top. So this was the last one of our video. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, you can subscribe to the channel or put a like to support our job. Thanks for watching again, and see you to the next episode.